I say alcohol must go!
The 1920s prohibition of alcohol in America was brought about to cleanse the country from the crime, violence and harm associated with alcohol abuse and create a better society. By 1933, this law was deemed a failure and was repealed. The ban did not stop the production of alcohol, but it did mean that alcohol production was now in the hands of gangsters and criminals. This unregulated supply of alcohol was produced more quickly and dangerously. Not only were there many cases where drinkers were poisoned by the illegal alcohol, but prohibition itself led to unprecedented violence and gun crime amongst illegal suppliers. 40 years later, our government responded to the abuse associated with drugs in the same way. I went to Bristol to meet a group called Anyone's Child, who have come together to mark the end of prohibition of alcohol and bring awareness to the dangers brought about by prohibiting laws on drugs.
My name is Martin Powell. I'm the Head of Campaigns and Communications at the Transform Drug Policy Foundation. I help do the media for this. I do a lot of political campaigning as well, and I work with the Anyone's Child project, really helping to take some of the families who've lost loved ones to meet politicians and engage on that sort of a level to help get policy change. The Anyone's Child campaign is incredibly powerful because no politician can sit there whilst a bereaved parent looks them in the eye and says, my child has died because of your drug policies, your government's drug policies, or your party's drug policies. What are you going to do about it? They can't come out with the usual old rubbish, quite frankly. Drugs are dangerous, that's why they're illegal. When they have sitting in front of them an example where, in fact, the fact that drugs are illegal has actually made them more dangerous and has resulted in the deaths of these people.
Decided that it was better to have the wheel, which looks 1930s, than the wrong way around.
You want to measure whether your drug policy is a success. Look at harm. Look at what's happening in this country now, and it's frankly a disaster. And the government should be ashamed of itself for continuing with the policy it's got.
We're from Anyone's Child, Families for Safer Drug Control. We have united here today to say that we must end the war on drugs. It's killing our children and not keeping them safe. Much as families came together to end the alcohol prohibition, now families are coming together to say we must end the drug war. That's why we're here today. We need to get drugs under control, and that means taking them out of the hands of criminals, putting them into the hands of doctors, pharmacists and licensed retailers, so that we can effectively get them under control and better protect our children. Thank you.
In
2014, my husband Chris died from taking drugs, and he battled with a Valium addiction for 11 years, and most of it was in secret. And his friends and family didn't know, and he'd hide it from me because of the shame and the stigma. We were together 11 years, and I didn't really fully understand him, and it was only after his death when I started looking into addiction and what addiction means that it became clear. I think that if the laws were different, that it would take down the shame and the stigma. Nobody's saying that drugs are good. Obviously, drugs that's why they need to be controlled. They're dangerous, and we don't want drugs in the hands of criminals. It's crazy to give that responsibility to criminals rather than the government, where it can be controlled. It's to have that support for other families that have gone through something similar, that have also felt that shame and the eyes of society sort of looking down on you and not being able to be open about your situation really and what's happened. So it's a massive support, and just hopefully together we can make a difference, and hopefully change the laws in some way. The more people that speak out, hopefully en masse, the governments we're hoping they start listening. Things are changing, and I just think the more and more people that speak out, hopefully the governments will listen eventually.
the starting point for any regulatory system for drugs, because all drugs can be risky, has to be what will deliver the best health benefits. If we look at something like tobacco, we basically halved use through regulation without criminalising anyone. The Misuse of Drugs Act was brought in over 40 years ago on the promise that it would eliminate drug use, and by eliminating drug use it would eliminate harms as well. But if you look back to that period, you only had something like 2,000 or 3,000 registered people dependent on heroin. Problematic use was actually minuscule compared with what it is now. And I think that is the most damning indictment of this government. And we really hope that they are starting to get the message. We are starting to get hints below the radar a little bit that they are realising that their policy is a disaster.